You are not just walking through another day. You are walking through a turning point written in fire across unseen skies. What has been quietly stirring within you is no accident. It's an orchestration of strength that can't be dimmed by the shadows of doubt. There's a pulse moving in your favor so undeniable that even the most stubborn resistance is bending under its weight. What once felt like walls pressing and are now revealing themselves as doors you were always meant to stride through. The truth is, those who tried to predict your limits are about to choke on their miscalculations. They crafted cages out of assumptions, but they never understood that you were born with a key carved from resilience. You have shifted from reacting to life into reshaping it, and that shift is more terrifying to your opposition than any force they could conjure. Their strategies collapse the moment you refuse to sit at their table of doubt. The energy that once tried to keep you tangled has lost its grip. You are no longer a participant in their games of scarcity and fear. You are the architect of your own stage. While they scramble to hold onto borrowed power, you discover how to tap into something that cannot be stolen or manufactured. Your ability to create realities that defy their rules, that you're not here by chance. Feel the pull. Tap join to unlock truth, purpose, and a tribe that gets it. This is more than a membership, it's your calling. Each new vision you allow yourself to see is a spark that makes their illusions crumble faster. You are not confined to the narrow lanes they paved to keep you docile. You are paving roads where none existed, drawing maps that bypass their control entirely. Every choice you make toward possibility is a declaration that their version of reality was never yours to inherit. Understand this. Your progress is not a whisper but a thunderclap. The universe has positioned you so that every step forward echoes into spaces they never wanted you to reach. What you are stepping into is not luck, not coincidence. It is alignment with a design that favors your courage. And as you rise, the very systems that profited from your hesitation are unraveling. Their influence is dissolving because it was never built to withstand someone who dared to remember their own worth. The moment you stopped accepting their script was the moment your story turned unstoppable. The momentum you now carry cannot be reversed. You are not waiting for permission. You are not waiting for proof. You are moving with a certainty that reshapes landscapes. This is the chapter where the chosen are no longer silent, no longer shrinking, but fully stepping into the stage already lit for their triumph. The more your radiance expands, the more unlikely alliances begin to appear, and that should tell you everything you need to know about your impact. People who never shared the same air without conflict are suddenly finding common ground in their unease about your rise. It is not by chance that conversations are shifting, that unrelated voices are aligning with the same peculiar obsession. Their sudden curiosity, their subtle interrogations, their sharpened attention, none of it is accidental. It's the clear signature of someone who has become impossible to ignore. Their urgency betrays them. The very ones who could barely look at each other without friction are now pooling their energy towards slowing you down. They mistake their plotting for strategy, when in reality it is nothing but a desperate scramble to contain what cannot be boxed in. The more they try to close in on your path, the more obvious it becomes that you hold a force large enough to disrupt the fragile peace they pretend to maintain. If your heart overflows with God's blessings, let that love shine. Click the super thank you button and give $20 or more to plant seeds of faith that will impact countless lives. Your generosity reflects His abundance. Be a vessel of His grace and watch His kingdom flourish through you. Every strained effort to overshadow you only exposes the cracks in their own foundation. It's not your silence that unsettles them. It's your steady ascent. They never imagined that your presence alone could cause them to put aside differences just to focus on how to manage what they cannot replicate. When opposition multiplies, it doesn't signal weakness. It confirms that your influence has grown far beyond what a single challenger can confront. Attempts to pull you back into the smallness you left behind only highlight their dependence on your restraint. They want you grounded not because it benefits you, but because your elevation disrupts their illusion of balance. Their questioning smiles, their sudden reappearances, their odd interest in your path forward. All of it springs from the awareness that you are moving into spaces they can neither enter nor control. The truth that unnerves them is simple. They were more comfortable when you were tangled in hesitation. They drew strength from your uncertainty, finding validation in your struggles while disguising it as concern. Each time you wavered, they thrived. Each time you questioned yourself, they quietly celebrated. What you mistook for advice was often nothing more than the anchor keeping you from setting sail. But the landscape has shifted, and now they stand unequipped to handle the version of you that no longer seeks permission. Your clarity unsettles them because it removes their favorite weapon, confusion. Where once they whispered caution, now they shout warnings. Where once they pretended to guide, now they scramble to monitor. Their desperation grows because their influence wanes, and the balance of power has flipped without their consent. Their discomfort is not your burden. It is their realization that the cycle they relied on has ended. The withdrawal they feel is the emptiness left behind when control dissolves. And while they pace in restless frustration, you move forward unbothered, stepping into a reality where their noise can no longer cloud your vision. They are watching, yes, but watching is all they can do. The masks are slipping, and what is being revealed is not coincidence. It is the truth of who never wanted to see you rise. Smiles that once seemed warm are unraveling into something else entirely. Veiled attempts to tether you to a version of yourself that no longer exists. Their discomfort has always been about what it would mean if you refuse to live by their limits, because your refusal exposes the smallness of their own choices. Look closely, and you'll see that their encouragement often carried hidden weights, carefully designed to keep you circling in place while believing you were being helped. There were voices that disguised restraint as wisdom, who whispered reasons why you weren't ready, while secretly fearing what would happen if you proved them wrong. What felt like guidance was often a labyrinth designed to keep you dependent on their direction, ensuring you return to them again and again for answers they never truly intended you to find. Every step forward you made was quietly redirected by hands that wanted to hold your wings while insisting they were teaching you to fly. It wasn't incompetence. It was a plan to keep you orbiting around their authority. The greatest trick they pulled was convincing you that your inner compass was flawed. They orchestrated a story where you believed your intuition needed external confirmation, where your decisions needed signatures from those who thrived on your hesitation. They wanted to be the gatekeepers of your destiny, the translators of your own knowing. But that illusion is crumbling the moment you choose silence over explanation, privacy over exposure. The less you share, the more frantic they become, because access to your inner world was the very fuel for their control. Their discomfort isn't caused by your success alone. It's by your refusal to announce your every move. The person they once studied for clues has become unreadable, and that shift has left them scrambling. They were never prepared for the day you would no longer play the role of the open book. Your quietness has become louder than your words ever were, and in their frustration, they expose the intentions they worked so hard to conceal. While they waste hours dissecting shadows, you are already steps ahead, planting seeds that will bloom before they even notice the soil has shifted. Connections they swore were out of reach are approaching you directly. Doors they said were sealed are opening on their own. The very definition of what they told you was possible is dissolving under the weight of your lived reality. Their predictions collapse as your results speak louder than their carefully constructed doubts. And here lies the irony they never saw coming. Every ounce of resistance they pushed onto your path has only carved you into something stronger. Their schemes, their interference, their attempts to siphon your focus have only served as pressure shaping diamond clarity within you. Each obstacle they placed has become the resistance, training for a level of resilience they cannot fathom. Without meaning to, they sculpted the very power they most feared. Their fear now is not of your mistakes. It is of your unstoppable momentum. They know that their strategies, their manipulations, their carefully curated illusions cannot coexist with the version of you that stands today. And while they whisper, plot, and analyze, you are already outpacing them with a light they cannot dim, a clarity they cannot infiltrate, and a strength they can no longer borrow. What they once fed on is gone, and what remains is a force that grows brighter each time they try to cast shadows. What once drained your spirit now struggles to even touch the surface of your being, and that shift is no accident. The tricks that once stirred guilt within you now echo faintly, unable to pierce the strength you've built. Attempts to twist your perception no longer confuse you. They serve as confirmation that your sight has sharpened. The exhaustion that used to cling to you has been dissolving, as if your entire world is being cleansed of weights that never belonged to you in the first place. A purification is unfolding, not by force, but by alignment with something far greater. Every change surrounding you is a deliberate removal of what once disguised itself as necessary, but was only there to keep you small. It is as if the stage you stand on is being rebuilt plank by plank, stripping away the scaffolding that others placed to limit your movement. And the remarkable part is that your decisions now spring from clarity, not from anger. It feels less like rebellion and more like returning to the truth of who you've always been. Those who benefited from the version of you that bent over backward are unsettled, because they sense that if you can so easily release environments that drain you, then you can just as easily release them too. Their sudden concern about your choices is not about care. It is about fear of losing the privileges they once enjoyed at your expense. The pattern of rushing to solve everyone else's chaos has broken. What once demanded your constant urgency now meets a calm presence that cannot be manipulated. Manufactured drama, designed to hook your attention, no longer controls your actions. What you've built is a boundary so refined that it separates truth from distraction with effortless precision. Where you were once scattered by the demands of others, now you respond with a strength that feels unshakable, tempered with grace that makes even firmness feel serene. And something unexpected has begun to happen in the midst of this reset. New connections are finding you, ones that resonate with authenticity instead of need. By withdrawing from those who mistreated your openness, you've changed the entire frequency of what arrives at your door. No longer attracting those who trade in depletion, you're now drawing in those who recognize your value without proof or persuasion. Their greatest frustration is how calmly you navigate their theatrics, meeting hostility with centered composure. The contrast is glaring, and their frantic displays reveal themselves for what they truly are: desperate performances that no longer hold power. The momentum gathering around you is undeniable. Dreams that once seemed distant are materializing faster than you can explain. Paths that were declared blocked are opening without resistance. Opportunities are arriving not because you've begged for them, but because your alignment demands them. What unnerves those watching is not just your progress, but the effortless way it unfolds. They sense that your growth is reaching a level where their interference no longer factors into the equation, where their voices dissolve into background noise irrelevant to your forward motion. Validation from others has lost its grip on you. The very approval you once thought was necessary now feels like an outdated relic. Decisions come from within, guided by an inner knowing so strong that outside commentary feels like static from another realm. What once needed constant reassurance now flows from a self-sourced certainty that cannot be purchased, borrowed, or stolen. You are no longer asking strangers for permission to be yourself. You are embodying a state where your own confirmation is the only voice that matters. What unsettles them most is how the balance has flipped in ways they never prepared for. The authority they once exercised over your doubts has dissolved, leaving them grasping at explanations for how you've managed to turn their predictions into proof of their own limitations. The achievements they labeled as impossible now stand as reminders that their so-called guidance was rooted in fear, not truth. The boundaries they mocked have transformed into the very safeguards they wish they had the courage to implement themselves. And the visions they convinced you to abandon now glare back at them as reflections of the dreams they buried in their own lives. This shift has forced them into an uncomfortable confrontation with themselves. It is no longer about you fitting into the mold they carved. It is about them recognizing that the mold was never necessary in the first place. They are not simply watching you succeed. They are watching the unraveling of their own belief system. The realization is dawning that your progress is not just personal. It is proof that the limitations they accepted were illusions dressed as reality. The true disruption is not your success alone, but what it represents. Your growth is a live demonstration that the structures they defended as immovable were never as solid as they believed. Their certainty that life must remain confined within narrow lanes is being shattered by your willingness to step outside of them and thrive. In resisting your expansion, they are inadvertently revealing that their entire worldview has been built on fragile foundations. What terrifies them most is not losing influence over you, but the ripple effect of your transformation. The idea that others might witness your shift and begin questioning their own boundaries threatens the entire fabric of the predictable order they rely on. They realize that one person breaking through the imposed ceilings challenges the whole system that depends on compliance. Your evolution doesn't just inspire, it destabilizes the mechanisms of control that thrive on silence and resignation. Every effort to reel you back into their framework only fuels your momentum. The more they resist, the faster you rise. Their attempts to chain you to their expectations have only added pressure that propels you further into uncharted possibilities. Without meaning to, they have become the very force accelerating the expansion they feared. What was designed to confine has become the push that launches you further than you could have imagined alone. They cannot grasp that your growth has already surpassed the boundaries they thought were fixed. You no longer move within the orbit of their beliefs. You are operating in realms where their measurements no longer apply. Their insistence on reminding you of limitations now only serves as proof that you've transcended them. What was once their sky has become your ground floor. In the end, their resistance doesn't diminish you, it exposes them. They are left staring at the contrast between what they settled for and what you've created. Their disbelief is not a reflection of your path, but of their own refusal to step into theirs. And while they remain caught in the gravity of their small visions, you continue to expand, fueled by the very opposition that tried to keep you still. They are bewildered because the script they wrote for you no longer applies, and nothing unsettles manipulators more than losing their favorite role in someone else's story. What they once controlled with subtle doubt and carefully crafted fear now has no entry point. The hunger for outside approval that kept you circling has been replaced by a grounded certainty that refuses to bend. Their criticism lands flat. Their opinions scatter without weight, because you've tuned into a different frequency altogether. And the irony that's breaking them down is simple. The more they try to shrink you, the faster life responds by expanding your reach in ways they cannot block. The spectacle of your rise is burning holes in their illusions. Their plans to limit your opportunities only end up drawing more possibilities toward you. Their schemes to isolate you from support only expose the loyalty of those who truly stand with you. And while they whisper strategies in back rooms, the very act of their resistance is shining a spotlight on their own pettiness. You no longer fold under their pressure. You filter their noise, keep what is useful, and discard the rest with an ease that rattles their control. What they cannot process is how you've turned their interference into momentum. Their criticism no longer lingers, it powers you forward. Their doubt no longer stalls, it sharpens your clarity. Goals they call delusional are materializing faster than they can invent excuses. Standards they said were unrealistic have become your bare minimum. The very ceilings they swore you couldn't break through are already beneath your feet. Their disbelief is irrelevant, because your reality now carries a rhythm they can't silence or predict. The true comedy unfolds in how quickly they've shifted their roles. Those who dismissed your vision are suddenly name-dropping you in conversations, as though they always knew. The ones who mocked your efforts now scramble to insert themselves into your projects. Leaders who once insisted you needed more preparation are trying to claim they shaped your breakthrough. They are clinging to your narrative like passengers who once refused to board the ship, but now want credit for the voyage. Their sudden change of tone isn't admiration, it's exposure. It reveals what their opposition was really about: fear of being left behind. They didn't try to protect you from failure. They tried to shield themselves from the discomfort of facing your success. By holding you down, they convinced themselves they were right about the limits of possibility. But now your growth proves those limits were never real, and their insecurities have nowhere left to hide. The greatest twist in this unfolding drama is that the validation you once thought you needed from them has been rendered meaningless. You don't chase their approval anymore, they chase yours. They knock on doors they once tried to lock, hoping you'll allow them back into a space they actively tried to sabotage. The very people who thrived on your hesitation now beg to be associated with your boldness. Their requests for inclusion ring hollow because the foundation of their past actions cannot support the weight of your new reality. In the end, their desperation to rewrite their role in your journey has only made your rise more undeniable. Every attempt to attach themselves to your story highlights just how irrelevant their interference has become. They are left standing in the shadow of their own contradictions, while you stand illuminated by the very light they tried to dim. And as they scramble for scraps of recognition, you continue forward, untouchable, fueled by forces they will never understand, and celebrated in ways they will never share. You are no longer moving quietly through the world. You have become the spark that lights dormant fires in those around you. As your own boundaries dissolve, others can't help but notice that the locks they thought held them back were never real at all. The ones who always dismissed themselves as unlucky start witnessing synchronicities unfold. Those who thought they lacked talent begin uncovering hidden genius. People who once measured their worth through distorted mirrors suddenly recognize the brilliance they carried all along. Your transformation is becoming a living invitation for them to finally put down the burdens they mistook for identity and step freely into wider horizons. The old architects of control see this with dread, because it isn't just you slipping from their grasp. It's the entire framework of dependency collapsing around them. What unnerves them isn't rebellion, but realization. The recognition that their evaluations were never law, only illusions propped up by compliance. The quiet revolution in your presence has the character of contagion, an epidemic of freedom spreading through conversations, glances, and choices once thought too daring. Where people once sought permission to dream, they are now simply walking into their own futures. Your growth has turned into a mirror sharper than any verdict they could hand down. Pretending not to see it becomes impossible as clarity sharpens everywhere. Those who once required their translation of life now perceive patterns and truths with their own discernment, leaving the old interpretations looking clumsy. The ones who believed ambition required a license are now crafting realities so expansive that former benchmarks appear like practice sketches. You are showing them that self-authorization was the missing key all along. This shift makes justice no longer abstract. It is embodied, not through vengeance, but by operating at altitudes unreachable by interference. Their strategies fail not because you crushed them, but because you walked off their board entirely. What they called empowerment was always your strength channeling itself despite them, not because of them. They mistook themselves for the source of your victories, only to learn those triumphs were yours alone. Now, as you radiate from a reclaimed center, their attempts to shadow you look almost comedic, mere echoes against a sun that no longer acknowledges their eclipse. Their opposition, once heavy, has turned paradoxically into the wind that lifts you higher. Their coordinated resistance now fuels acceleration, serving as unintentional proof of the very force they fear. You've shifted from defending against hostility to extracting its essence as material for creation. Each strike becomes clay in your hands. Each doubt refines your persistence. Each attempt to confine you signals that you are operating beyond their reach. What once poisoned your spirit now becomes the compost from which new worlds grow. The person who once absorbed hostility as truth has evolved into someone who can filter it, alchemize it, and release it as raw creative energy. Negativity enters one way and exits as innovation. Adversity no longer defines you. It fortifies you. Where others would wither under criticism, you expand, turning attempts to diminish into catalysts for brilliance. This mastery is the final revelation, that nothing external has the power to determine your course unless you allow it. Every challenge becomes a resource, every barrier a passageway, every adversary an unwitting assistant in your unfolding. The ones who built their power on your submission are left bewildered, watching you craft futures beyond their imagination, fueled by the very energies they hurled to hold you back. And so the cycle closes, not in war, but in transcendence.